All right, let's go. I'm going to kick off. It is 1 minute past 5:30. So everybody online watching and listening, just give me a thumbs up if you can, please. If you can see me, you can hear me, and I've got my thumbs up. Perfect. That is amazing. Thank you very much. All right, let's kick things off. So we are back for those of you online, we have got a jam-packed audience in person. So if you are in Australia or in Sydney, the next one's going to be in Brisbane. So it's not going to be in Sydney. So if you are in person, we are going to have some pizzas and we are going to have some drinks and that sort of stuff. So based on last year, so 2024, we are back for 2025. Some really good feedback from last year. So every single month we are going to be in person and remote, different topics and that type of thing. Today we're going to be focusing on Copilot agents in SharePoint. That's going to be the entire topic for today. Just a little bit of the agenda for today. As I said, we do have everybody in person, and again, online, you're missing out. You can smell it through the computer. There will be pizzas, there will be drinks, etc., etc. So then we're just going to cover off a few items off the roadmap. Over the past, I've limited it to the last 7 days. Just a couple of bits and pieces that I think are going to be valuable for you guys that are coming to Copilot. Then we're going to jump in. We're actually going to build a Copilot agent inside of SharePoint that is going to be looking at a real-world case study that has been implemented, that I did implement a couple of months ago around that for a sales team and around case studies. So we're going to build that out, and then we're going to have a look at what that looks like. Sponsors. So today's sponsor is my little private membership, SharePoint Copilot Mastery. So there is a bunch of people in there that are like you guys, IT pros, end users and executives in there learning all about SharePoint and Copilot, how it can be used to streamline all of your processes and information inside of M365. So jump on there. If you do want to join that, jump on, use that code Mastery. You will get a little bit of a discount off the membership as well. So jump on there if you are interested. Before we do jump into the roadmap stuff, I will say that yes, everybody online, the recording will be sent out post-event. So before you ask any questions, yes, there will be. The chat is open. The Q&A is open. I may not get to look at those, but I will follow that up post-event and answer all of that. Yes, Christina, you do get the recording. That's your answer in the chat. I can see the chat at the moment. All right. What's happened over the last 7 days is a few interesting things that are coming, especially around the SharePoint Copilot agent area as well. So chatting one-on-one with SharePoint agents inside of Teams is coming in June. You can't do that currently, but you will be able to do that inside of Teams chats. Adding multiple SharePoint agents inside of Teams chats and meetings as well is coming. Again, you can't do that at the moment. You can use other agents, but not SharePoint agents, which is going to be extremely interesting and some really good use cases for the SharePoint agents inside of Teams chats and meetings. This is more general around PowerPoint, and while I don't use PowerPoint that much, creating a PowerPoint slide from a file or prompt is also coming in April in 2025. I'm not sure what that actually looks like. So that will be interesting. There are some differing opinions about Copilot in PowerPoint. So this will be interesting to see what the potential here is going to be. Again, Templify is a third party system, SaaS, where you can host your templates in there. So again, you can, or Copilot is going to be able to use your enterprise assets hosted in that if you do have that service when you're creating your presentations inside of Copilot or inside of PowerPoint, sorry. Again, SharePoint agents in Teams channels. So there's a lot of integration here, as you can see, with SharePoint agents and with Microsoft Teams that are coming. So SharePoint agents are going to be able to be used inside of Teams channels, similar to how they're going to be used in Teams group chats as well. And that is next month. The App Store as well, making your SharePoint agents more discoverable inside of the Teams App Store. Again, that is coming. So you build your SharePoint agents similar to what we're going to look at shortly. And these are going to be able to be sourced from the App Store as well. All right, so on to agents. I think this year is probably going to be pretty big in terms of agents. So again, just with some stats here, take it or leave it from Gartner. I think this is probably going to be a little bit sooner than 2028. These software applications are going to include just natively by default agentic AI. Sorry? I have no idea how Gartner defines agentic AI. Sorry? Yeah, I don't. In a market, yes, correct, exactly right. I don't know how Gartner explains agentic. Agents, all right, Copilot agents, what are they? So we've got two extremes. We've got simple and we've got advanced. Different tooling, pro code, no code. We're going to look at more no code today. So we're not going to go too deep into the pro code scenarios, but we go from simple all the way through to advanced. So simple being retrieval of information grounded in data. The SharePoint Copilot agents are going to be grounded in only data inside of, in our case, going to be a SharePoint document library. So rather than having Copilot be grounded in all of your M365 content, we can go right down to even specific documents if we need to, right? So we're going to look at that. We can go up to the autonomous agents as well. So being able to define a trigger and then do some type of action when that trigger eventuates. That's what we're talking about when we talk about autonomous agents. So for example, email comes into an inbox, query, we then look at some system prompts, similar to like custom GPTs, or if you're using Perplexity or Claude or something like that, those projects, similar to that type of thing where we're looking at system prompts, instructions. When something comes in, we take action and we do something based on a trigger. The tooling, as I said, we've got no code, pro code. All right, so Agent Builder Copilot Studio is more around your no code type of stuff. Then we've got Copilot, well, Copilot Studio, you can use pro code as well. And Azure AI is more of your pro code stuff. We did do a session last year with Cam Dwyer, who went more pro code stuff. So if that is on the YouTube channel as well, where he used some developer coding to do a pro code agent as well, and that's come a hell of a long way since that session as well. So agents in SharePoint, that's what we're going to tackle today. Cool. So sorry, the agent builder. What about the agent builder? You said you'll see the agent builder shortly. Yeah. We'll go through that. So agents in SharePoint, every SharePoint site now will come with a default agent that's grounded in just that SharePoint site. So any document library or pages or anything like that, the agent will be grounded just in that site collection, just in that site. All right. So if you're using, when you create a SharePoint site, you'll get your little Copilot icon in the top right-hand corner, which we'll have a look at. And you can create your own SharePoint agents. that are based on content within inside your SharePoint site. Folders, document libraries, a number of documents. You can select your documents. You can create an agent based on a subset of documents, a single document, everything like that as well. And it does, what's important to understand is it does follow all of your existing SharePoint permissions. So if you don't have access to a document and you interact with one of these agents, you're not going to get responses back from documents you don't have access to. So it is similar to SharePoint search or M365 search. All right. So if you search for something, you're not going to get results based if you don't have access to that content. Okay. All right. Let's actually go ahead and build one out. So again, this is actually a real world use case, and one that is in production right now with a company sales team. So how this is set up, this is actually not the company's site. This is a cut down version, obviously. But I've got a SharePoint site here. I've got a simple document library with some metadata with all of our case studies. So this company has a bucket load of case studies around certain things. In this case here, I've got a few documents in here with the case studies are transcripts from videos or written case studies that have been created in a specific structure. Okay, so these are fake companies. These aren't real, but it follows a defined. These documents are all have the same sections basically, right? So what we've done is take all of the video transcripts, take all of the video case studies, all of the written case studies, and put them into documents that follow the same structure. Now, what we can see in the top right-hand corner here is our little Copilot icon. So up in this top right-hand corner, as I said before, every single SharePoint site comes with now its own Copilot agent. Now that's grounded in the entire site. This site here only has a single document library, so it's not going to be, it hasn't got any extended grounding. But what we can do is we can create our own agents from here. And there's a couple of different ways in which we can do this. From this document library here, I'm just going to close this panel down. We've got this create an agent button. I'm in this document library. If I hit create agent, it's automatically going to only scope this agent to this document library. I'm just going to exit this. I could, if I wanted to, select a couple of documents as well and click on create an agent. And that would create an agent that's only going to be surfacing information from those 3 documents. Now, again, if I don't have access to those documents as an end user, these could have different permissions based on your permissioning. If you've broken inheritance on documents or folders or things like that, then you won't, if I'm interacting with this agent, then I won't get responses from those documents. So we can go right down to specific documents. But what we want to do is, if there we go. What we're going to do is we are going to create an agent that is based on this entire document library and these case studies. So if I click create agent, automatically selects our document library, and we're going to open this agent. So we can see there automatically I've got an agent specifically built. Now I'm going to close this. You'll see that this agent is just a file. It becomes a file in this document library, and it's an agent file. Now, if I jump up into Copilot up the top, we can see that I've got now a documents agent. If we edit this agent though, we can start to configure it a little bit differently. We can give it a specific name. We can give it an icon. So I'm going to give this a name. I'll call this Sales Case Study Assistant. I won't give it an icon for now. I can give it a description. You can see in the sources tab here, though, you can see that I can add multiple or different areas here. Now, by default, because I selected the document library, it's already grounded in that document library, but I could add additional SharePoint sites or additional locations here outside of this SharePoint site too, if I wanted to. So it doesn't have to specifically be inside the SharePoint site. We could bring in multiple SharePoint sites based on URLs or individual documents if we need to. Now, where it gets interesting is in this behaviors tab. So we can change our welcome message. So you can see on the right-hand side here, we've got our welcome message and some starter prompts. We've also got this section here for instructions. So if you've ever seen or created custom GPTs or Claude projects or things like that, you've got this concept of system prompts where I can enter in this instructions box here, how I want this agent to act, what the response is going to be, how it's going to, the tone, all of the instructions that I want this agent to follow. I will pass you the mic. What was the question?
Specific. The question was simply those that's familiar with writing prompts for ChatGPT, custom GPTs, how similar or different, or what twists and turns can you recommend?
Very, very, very similar. So I actually use Copilot. I've created an agent for in Copilot that actually writes the instructions and the system prompts for me. So I'm using Copilot to write my Copilot agent instructions. ChatGPT doesn't do a good job of that, I've found. Claude is very, very good at writing Copilot instructions as well. But this is what we can see on the screen here is what I've found to be a fairly good, I guess, framework to and sections when you're, whether it's a Copilot agent, whether it's a SharePoint Copilot agent, or whether it's an M365 Chat Copilot agent. This is a fairly good framework to start with. A lot of times when people are creating agents, they really don't know where to start. But this sort of framework and headings and sections give us a really good starting point or best practice. Sure.
Via hub in an easy way if you have an internet with many sites.
Is there a way to connect a hub with, in terms of a Copilot agent? Well, no. You'd have to add each site as a source.
Is it possible to use lists as a source?
No, you cannot.
Next one is, who needs Copilot license for this to work? And do we need a Copilot studio to create these agents?
I'm not going to answer that right now. I will get back to that. I don't like licensing questions at the best of times. I'll get back to that question and I'll provide the answers about the licensing stuff post event, because I don't want to give you the wrong answer. All right. So I am in Visual Studio Code here, but what I have found, and also from the Copilot extensibility team overseas, is that if you create these instructions with Markdown, what's called Markdown, so we can see a few hashtags and a few little different bits and pieces in here, it gives a good structure to the instructions that you feed in. So whether it is, as I said, whether it is a SharePoint Copilot agent or any other type of custom M365 Copilot agent, this type of structure, or giving it a structure like this to follow, seems to generate some good responses. So with this customer or this client, we iterated over these instructions here. All right, so we can see that we've got at the top, we kind of set the persona or how we want this agent to act. We've got core responsibilities, we've got knowledge-based parameters, we've got the guidelines for the responses, query handling procedures, we've got the format standards, which give or take, voice and tone, and then we've got limitations and boundaries as well. All right, so we've kind of set these instructions out. So all we're going to do is we're going to grab these instructions. I'm just going to grab these instructions here, and I'm going to paste these into the instructions for the agent. Really, really bad text box that Microsoft do provide here because it's horrendous. So we've got all of that inside of our instructions. We could give some starter prompts as well. So if I might say, can you summarize all the Copilot case studies?
Yeah, I think it's big.
In a table, please. Give me all the case studies from the financial sector. You can see that that's dynamically changing on the right-hand side for us. I'll just leave it at that for now. And then we'll save that. So once that's been saved, right now, we can only interact with this inside of this SharePoint environment or inside of the SharePoint site. But as we saw before, you will be able to interact with this agent inside of Teams, inside of chats and channels. So now we've got our agent built. Our instructions, we've got the content that we're using, and now we can, as a sales team, we can come in and look at our case studies. So if we ask us, actually, let's use one of these starter prompts. So we'll use one of these, and given that we're grounded in just our content, we can see that we've got now our case studies all around Copilot specifically in a table within a specific format. All right. We can then iterate over this. So if we look maybe at, let's look at this one here. So if we take this one, how many users were impacted with this case study? So we can have this conversation now with our sales assistant, our case studies assistant. And as a sales team for this organization, rather than having to search through documents, search through SharePoint libraries, open up documents, close documents, open up different things, we can start to now interact with this agent. Now, what I've found also, and what others have found, is that these agents are good at specific things. So rather than trying to overload your agent with lots of different tasks, different roles, acting as different people, trying to do everything inside of a single agent, what's working really well is having lots of different agents, but agents that are doing specific tasks. All right. Now, this might be overkill, but there's one of the product managers for the Copilot extensibility side. He's got 50 agents just for himself that are doing certain things. Now, not SharePoint Copilot agents, but other M365 agents, Copilot agents outside of SharePoint. This is specifically just for SharePoint. But being able to bring in agents from in a single chat or in a single conversation that are doing certain tasks, and then chaining those agents inside of that chat becomes extremely powerful. So if we wanted to then create an agent, again, just specifically on certain documents, so I can select these 4 documents here. I can create an agent, and you can see automatically here that it's grounded just in 4 documents. I can then jump into edit, and I'll go, let's just call it 4 docs. So we'll call this one that. Now, I'm not going to pass this any instructions. So you can see from our sources, now we've got only 4 documents. What I could do, I'll jump into SharePoint. I'll jump into my IT service desk. I've also got some documents here inside of this library with some knowledge base articles as well. All right. So I'll grab this URL. I'll grab the document library. I'll jump into my agent. I'm going to add I'm going to add my service desk as a source. You can see here that I can either source from an entire site, or I can source from specific libraries. Now, this is a completely separate site collection here. I've got my documents. I can select my documents, or I can select the entire document library. So I'll select this entire document library. So now, over and above my case studies, I've also got all of my knowledge source from my IT service desk here too. So I'm going to hit save. So that's now been saved. So now I've got literally 2 Copilot agents. If I jump up into the Copilot menu at the top here, I've got my documents and I've got my case study. So if I jump into my 4 docs, I've got also I'm hoping this works, because this has now been grounded in the other SharePoint site as well. So that document, what I've got there inside of the other SharePoint site, has now been referenced. I've got my citations, there's the article inside there. I can also then now say, can you, let's say, do we have any case studies about automation? So again, here I've got a summary of any. Now I've only selected a few documents here, but I've got all of my case studies. Rather than having to search through stuff, I've got all my case studies here, all around automation that I can quickly give to an end user.
That's providing insights, for example, can Copilot tell me that a project ran over budget and where?
If that information is inside, it can be surfaced, then yes, it can. Can you use external websites? Not in Copilot, not in SharePoint Copilot Agents. You can in M365 Agents, but not in SharePoint Copilot Agents.
Can an agent be deployed onto a website?
Can an agent be deployed onto a website? Yes, an agent can, not a SharePoint Copilot agent, but if you're building an agent with Copilot Studio, you can publish it to other channels, and a public-facing website is one of those, yes.
What happens?
Will it make something up if there's no relevant answers inside of a document? That's where I would put in the instructions. If there was no answer, then respond with a specific fallback option. The agent themselves is stored. Let me go through that because that's a good question. So you can see here, I've got inside of this document. I don't need that microphone anymore. Inside of this document library, I've now got 2 agents. So the agents themselves, if I'm creating it at the document library level, you can see that the agents actually live in that document library. Now, what we can also do is we can if I am in this sales case study assistant agent, I can also set this as an approved agent. Now, what happens when I set this as an approved agent is that it moves this agent out of this document library. It stays in this site though, but what we get is inside of the SharePoint site, not site pages, inside of the SharePoint site assets library, we get this Copilot's folder. Inside this Copilot's folder is where our approved agents live. So they do live at the site, in the site, and where they are created. Now, right now, you can't edit. You'll notice that there's the agent for the SharePoint site isn't there, and you can't edit right now the agent that's provisioned or created for the site. So this one here is automatically created for every single SharePoint site. The ability to edit this site agent is coming and is on the roadmap. So you will soon be able to edit the site Copilot agent as well, but you can't right now. Okay, so there is a question. If the agent file in the library is deleted, the agent is gone. Yes, that is correct. It is gone. So now that that agent has been approved, it changes things a little bit. If I jump up into here, you'll see that I've now got this approved agent up here and not underneath. Now, if I jump into another site here, so I'm in my IT service desk site, completely different site. I jump up into Copilot. I've got my site, but you can also see that I've got my other recent agents here as well. So I can actually jump in here. What SharePoint case studies do we have? So this agent isn't living on this site, but it's a recent one that I've used. So I'm interacting with this SharePoint Copilot agent that's in a different site, but I'm using it from the IT service desk site. Bit matrixy, but I can interact with different SharePoint Copilot agents from different sites as well. Now, if I jump back into my case studies site, you can also see that you can set a different agent as the default. So by default, the default agent is the site agent that gets created automatically for us. But if I want to set my case study agent as the default, I can set that as the default. So now, when I go to the Copilot icon, fingers crossed, that's now the default agent for the site and not the site agent. Okay. Just looking through the questions here. So can we give a prompt to summarize the case studies summary in a PowerPoint slide? Can we give a prompt to summarize the case studies summary in a PowerPoint slide? So from inside PowerPoint, no, you can't. Is there a way to see all created agents in SharePoint? Well, you could use SharePoint search and you could search for because this is actually a file type, right? So one way that I have done this is that you can see that that's a .agent file. So if you did a SharePoint search on that specific document or that specific file type, and you had access to those agents in the sites, then yes, you could see all of the agents. All of my demos are very helpful. Thank you. All right. In a nutshell, that's SharePoint Copilot Agents. What we might do is, if there aren't any more questions on the Copilot title bar, this one here, and under here, yes, they would be listed under approved for that particular site that you're on. How is agents governance handled at a site level? What does governance mean? Who can create them? Maybe. So members can create them. Who asked that question? Let me have a look. What are we what are we meaning by governance? If you can pop that into the chat. Ernest, if you can pop what you mean by governance into the chat. We've also got, oh, that was you, Melinda, with 50 agents. You're not going to be creating 50 agents.
Is there a way to see all created agents in SharePoint? Well, let's get.
Yeah, that's what we saw before. You see the Copilot button at the top and click it, and then a list of names appear below. How do they know what to do next and which one to use? Well, that is a very good question, and that is something that probably technology is not going to handle, but end user adoption would handle, I would think, Kirsty. If you want one for yourself, it wouldn't be a SharePoint agent. It would be an agent that you could, an M365 agent. So the agents that you create with SharePoint would be available to everybody visiting that site, not just for yourself. So what we might do then is let's go into Copilot itself. So if I'm in in Copilot here, what we'll see on the right-hand side here is we can create an agent. Now, if I create an agent here, then it's for me. I can use this. I can share it if I wanted to as well. But you can see here on the right-hand side, I've got a few specific agents that I've created, right? So I've got Frankie, I've got a strategic advisor. So if I go into my strategic advisor agent, this is not shared with anybody. This is just me. This is my agent. It's my business partner. It's actually built for a financial services CEO. So we can see here that I'm not in SharePoint. This is a different type of agent. It's not grounded in SharePoint data or anything like that. It's I'll jump into it in a second. You can have a look. But this is acting as a strategic advisor for a CEO, right? So if I jump into my agents, so again, just to reiterate, we're not using these aren't SharePoint agents. These are M365 Copilot agents, and these are my agents. So I can create a little army of agents just for me that are doing different things. This one in particular, we can see when I jump into configure mode for this agent, it's a similar user interface here. I've got a name, I've got a description, I've got my instructions. So you can see here, I've got all of my list of instructions here that I've written out. I could, but I haven't, add as knowledge sources. I could add SharePoint in here and SharePoint sites as knowledge sources in this agent as well, if I wanted to. I've actually enabled web search here in this agent, but it's not grounded in SharePoint content. If I jump into one of my other agents here called Frankie, we can see that this is grounded in those help desk articles or those knowledge-based articles inside that IT service desk site that I had before. But I can now use this agent outside of SharePoint, inside of the M365 Copilot experience. So if I jump back into Copilot, and I jump in here. I could, hey, Frankie, can you help me create a SharePoint page? So although this isn't a SharePoint Copilot agent, this agent is grounded in those SharePoint documents. It's only going to respond from the sources in those documents. Now it's giving me an output here that I've told it to give me. So in the instructions for Frankie, this help desk agent, I've given it instructions and the format to follow here. So I've got a summary, I've got key points, I've got the article ID reference, I've got the proposed solution. Then I actually go to all of my detailed steps, the reference, etc. And a silly little joke because I've told it in the instructions to give me a little joke at the end of every single response. In this agent, so inside of this agent here, no, you can't, as specific public websites as sources, not through this agent, but you can through Copilot Studio agents. So if we go a little bit of a step further, and go to directly into Copilot Studio here. So now we're looking at kind of three different things. So we've got the simple Copilot agents in SharePoint, point and click basically. We've got the agent builder inside of M365 chat. And now we're looking directly into Copilot Studio. So if I create a new agent inside of Copilot Studio here, I'll just create a blank one. What do you mean by fixed temperature? Correct. Correct. So this is being set up inside of Copilot Studio. Now you can see we get a lot more capabilities inside of Copilot Studio here. We've got knowledge, we've got actions, and we've got triggers. So I spoke before about autonomous agents at the start. These triggers here are how we would configure autonomous agents. So when something happens, this agent would run. I can show you an example of that in just a sec. But inside of this knowledge here, you can see that we've now got the ability to add public websites, SharePoint, Dataverse, and it opens up a bucket load of stuff that we can add as knowledge here. We can even upload specific files into this agent. So if we've got handbooks or policies or things like that, we can upload documents into this agent specifically. Yeah. Not with it's governed by the permissions at the SharePoint site. So members can create agents, owners can approve them. So triggers. So this is where we would go, and this probably may look familiar to a lot of you that are familiar with Power Automate or Power Platform. Then as a trigger, when something happens, this agent is going to then go to work. When a response is submitted from a form, when an email arrives in an inbox, when something happens inside a SharePoint, this agent's going to then go off and do its thing. Lots of opportunities there to make this run in the background and be autonomous and do certain things. For example, I've got an agent in here, which is an autonomous IT help desk agent. So what this does is it listens to an inbox. Here's my description. Here are my instructions. Here's Harry. Now for this particular example, and it was just for testing, what it's doing is it's listening
and then what?
To an inbox for an email. Sorry, I'm just going to see who. I'm just going to mute all. It's listening to an inbox for an email with a specific subject line. Once it receives that, we saw that the help desk agent before where I asked it to create a SharePoint page, if it can help me create a SharePoint page. Doing the same thing, but this is autonomous now. It doesn't mean a user is asking a question. It's sending an email to the service desk email address. I can't create a SharePoint page. How do I restore an item? So it's like a ticket, right? So I've got my instructions. There's the knowledge. Okay, so it's those files in that SharePoint site as knowledge. But then I've got an action here as well. Okay, so, and this is where the generative AI component comes into play. I haven't configured anything. I haven't told it to do anything. I haven't created a workflow. I haven't done anything. What I've done is I've described this in the action, in the instructions here, what it's going to do. So it's going to look for this. It's going to get a response or get an answer for me, but then it's automatically going to email using this action that user. Now, because I'm inside of M365, it knows who that user is. So the email's coming in, it knows the person, it knows the email address. So it automatically uses that email address to respond back to that user. So I haven't configured anything. I'm not going to do this live because I changed it this morning, and I don't even know if it's. I probably broke it, but that's the concept of an autonomous agent. It opens up a stack of different scenarios for us. Okay. And if you've got multiple autonomous agents running at the same time, you know, at different stages, you could. I mean, with these actions here, let me just jump into the actions. So if I add an action, actually, let's jump into trigger. Maybe. So there's a bunch of different connectors already there out of the box, inbuilt, pre-built that you can use. So Salesforce for an example. When a record's created in Salesforce, this agent could trigger and go off and do different actions for us. So we've kind of looked at 3 different types of scenarios. So your SharePoint agent, which is fairly simplistic and basic, but gives you a stack of additional value on your SharePoint sites. We've then got your M365 Copilot agents that you can build from the agent builder and create an agent. And again, if I jump back into my agents and I jump into Frankie here, who's my help desk agent, we can bring in inside of Copilot. I think it's still business chat. I can't keep track of the name changes, but inside of here, we can bring in a good way of thinking about this is that it's almost like a project. This chat is like a project, or it's something we're working on, because we can bring in different agents in this single chat and stay in context. So I've brought in this agent, Frankie, but I could then also bring in my strategic advisor into this chat as well, and it would keep the context of what's happening inside of this chat. So that's how you can chain different types of agents. And if you have different agents for specific use cases or tasks, then you can bring them into that single chat there. Is it? Yes, it is. Yep.
Next one is, why do you need to use Copilot agents to run autonomous workflows and not just use Power Automate?
Yeah, you can use Power Automate to trigger workflows, but you're not getting the code, the generative AI type of component there. So you can see with that, with the agent the autonomous agent that we just looked through, I didn't configure anything. I just put in a trigger, put in some actions, wrote some instructions, and then it went off and did its own thing via the instructions, got all the information from all the knowledge sources that I gave it, and then triggered that action based on those instructions. So yes, you could potentially build a similar thing with Power Automate. That agent there literally took maybe 15 minutes to build or create, and it's using natural language to do that. Can I do a Control++? What does Control++ do? Oh, zooms it. You want to take a screenshot? Is that what you're trying to do? You're trying to steal instructions. That's what you're trying to do. Can you what? Can you pay? Of course you can, but I'll actually give it to you. So when I send the recording out, I'll give you these instructions, and you can have a look at them. But it gives you an idea. I mean, that's a fairly detailed. This one here, the autonomous one, is a detailed agent, but it still gives you I like having the structure of the agents and giving you a starting point rather than starting from a blank canvas. I've even got this agent here, which is a Copilot agent creator that I use to actually create the instructions for a particular Copilot agent. The instructions in this is saying that, ask me one by one, ask me the questions that you need to create the instructions for a Copilot agent. We can't at the moment. That is coming in the roadmap slides that I shared at the start. That is coming. Yeah. Copilot licensing. Yes and no. There's a new a few weeks ago. There's some changes to the licensing. I will follow up and give you a definitive answer post this. I'll just grab the right answer for you, because there is a new consumption plan that does allow for people that don't have a Copilot an M365 Copilot license to still use the agents, but it's on a consumption basis. Okay. I'm going to end it there if there's no other questions. Just looking at the chat.
So you said the security and the underlying folders within SharePoint, the whole site, you don't get the agent would only respond with you're able allowed to access.
Yes.
That's just based on.
Can you repeat?
So the security within, if you break a SharePoint agent, the security in the files that you're pointing the agent at, you're saying that takes into account the user's privileges to try to ask a question.
Yes.
Does that only apply to Office documents within the SharePoint folder or site?
All documents, all content.
All content.
Yes. So if you're storing other PDFs or something like that, and if you don't have access to those documents, then no, you won't have. You won't get responses from that. Right.
So to be clear, you've got 10 documents in the folder.
Yep. 10 documents in a folder.
My friend has access to all, I only have access to 8 of them. All the Word documents, but I'm not aware of them all, and they don't have access. If I ask a question, I'm not going to get an answer on some of those documents, whereas this gentleman will.
That is correct. So the question for everybody online, the question is, if you're looking at the screen there, if person 1 has access to all of those documents and person 2 only has access to 8 of those documents, and they ask a question or they interact with an agent that is grounded in this document library, the responses that each person gets back would be different based on their permissions. Yes, correct. Yep. So the question is, if I add new documents to this document library, how soon would that be available? Immediately. From the agent, immediately, yeah.
Apologies if it's advanced, but improve memory.
Memory?
Massive library of thousands of documents versus 4 documents that are 100 page.
Yeah.
How can I find information on how much of those it's going to consider?
The question is about memory and how many documents. I'll have to check the limit. I'm not 100% sure on the limit. But if there's 5,000 documents in this document library and the agent's grounded in those in the entire library, are you asking whether it would surface all of those documents? Yep. Yep.
Like the chunking it in different ways.
Yeah, well, chunking, you won't get chunking stuff in SharePoint Copilot Agents,
Yeah.
but if you needed to do that, you'd need to do that in a pro code agent as opposed to a SharePoint agents are fairly simple.
Yeah.
It's saying that maximum file size, 250 gig.
Yeah.
It's saying the maximum length of a decoded file path is 400 characters. Maximum amount of metadata per site is the 1 terabyte. Maximum number of terms is 1 million. Agents don't use this skill,
Yeah, so
so
250 gig. That was the last size I saw. That is changing. The actual amount of documents, I don't think there's a limit on the amount, from my understanding.
30 million files.
Oh, that's a SharePoint. No, that's a So that's a SharePoint limit, a SharePoint thing. So 30 million. So in a SharePoint document library, you can have 30 million items in a SharePoint document library.
It says
Yeah.
process up to 10 times.
Yeah.
Sorry again, Mr. was out of the room, but is that still STM is agents or going to strategies to work around that?
So the limits or the length of the chat, is there a limitation in the agents? Not that I've heard of. In the chat experience, yes. Yeah.
License requirements to get to deployments agents.
I will answer that. I'll get the licensing questions answered after this, because I don't know off the top of my head, but I'll find out. Yeah, and I don't want to give you the wrong answer.
Question, can agents create files or edit files?
No.
Will a SharePoint agent ever bias providing a quicker answer rather than a detailed answer?
Will a SharePoint Copilot agent
Ever bias providing a quicker answer rather than a detailed answer? So
Ever.
it's a large document library.
ever bias? Sorry.
The very last one by Declan.
Will a SharePoint agent ever bias providing a quicker answer in, say, a large document library rather than a detailed answer? Well, would it bot? Yes, you would need to do, well, you'd need to configure your instructions and write your instructions for the agent. So if you wanted it to provide a quicker answer or a summary, then you'd need to write that in the instructions, or depending on how detailed you want it, you'd need to write the instructions for it to follow.
Is it possible to build an agent for a specific site page? If I try, it automatically selects the main page and not the underlying one. Pasting the URL to works well when configuring the agent. Alex has surfaced it.
We have several site pages with specific work instructions. Is it possible to build an agent for a specific site page? No, you can't. If I try this, it automatically selects the main page and not the underlying one. No, that is correct. No, you can't. Can't do that on a specific page. That is all. Very good. If there's no more questions, we will end the session there. There was meant to be pizza coming, if you wanted to hang around for a couple of slices. Everybody online, thank you very much. Yes, I will send the recording out most likely tomorrow. Awesome. Thank you very much. Good. If the chat will be open, so just if you've got any questions, I will post some follow-ups around to everybody that registered as well, just around in with the recording, just around the licensing, because that has changed recently, and also with the consumption plan and not having to have an M365 Copilot license to use agents. So I'll post all that out as well. So thank you very much, everybody. Good stuff.